I'm Jessica, 68, sitting in my penthouse, surrounded by luxury I once only dreamed of. I can't help but reflect on the journey that led me here. It all came to a head one day when my son, Ryan, finally showed up at my door after months of silence. He looked haggard, his expensive suit rumpled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice filled with a desperation I'd never heard before. "I need to talk to you." I sat him down and looked him straight in the eye. "Before we start, Ryan, I want you to understand something. I've changed, and things will never be the same between us." It all started on a cold Christmas morning. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, sipping my coffee and watching the snow fall, when my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "We just want a peaceful Christmas with the family. Don't come." Those words hit me like a punch in the gut. I'd spent my whole life sacrificing for my family. After my husband died when Ryan was just a baby, I worked two grueling jobs to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I'd planned this Christmas for months, buying gifts, preparing recipes, imagining the joy on my grandchildren's faces. I remember looking around my shabby apartment at the Christmas decorations I'd put up with so much love. The stockings I'd embroidered with each family member's name, including Ryan's wife, Lily. She came from a wealthy family, and ever since they got married, I'd felt like an outsider in my own son's life. My homemade gifts seemed cheap compared to her family's lavish presents. My stories about Ryan's childhood were met with eye rolls and whispers. And my grandchildren, Ava and Ethan, barely acknowledged me when I was around. But then, a call from my neighbor, Sarah. She and her husband, David, lived in the penthouse of our building. They invited me to their Christmas dinner. At first, I hesitated, feeling out of place. But then I thought about Ryan's text and decided it was time to stop making myself small for people who didn't appreciate me. I dug out a red silk dress I'd bought on a whim years ago, but never had an occasion to wear. I put on my mother's pearls and headed to Sarah and David's. Their penthouse was a world away from my apartment. The people there were from high society circles, but they treated me with respect and kindness. I had deep conversations with them, and for the first time in years, I felt like an equal. After that night, I decided to embrace my new life. I'd inherited a fortune of $8 million from my great-aunt Clara 3 years ago, but had kept it a secret, wanting Ryan to make his own way. But he'd never respected me, always borrowing money and taking me for granted. I hired a personal shopper, a decorator, and a real estate agent. I moved into a penthouse in the same building, just a few floors up from my old place. I started traveling, attending charity events, and even joined the board of a foundation. Photos of me at these events started appearing on social media. And then, the texts and calls from Ryan and Lily started. First, it was a friendly text from Lily, then an invitation to Ava's spring concert. And then, the flowers signed by the whole family. I knew what had changed. They'd seen the photos and realized I had money. When Ryan finally came to my penthouse to talk, I told him about the inheritance. The look on his face was priceless. He couldn't believe I'd had $8 million all along. He started stuttering, trying to explain why he'd treated me the way he had. He said he and Lily were having problems, that he needed money for a divorce lawyer and to pay the kids' school fees. I listened to him, but I wasn't going to be his safety net anymore. I told him that I'd pay for the divorce lawyer, but it was severance pay. After that, he'd have to handle his own problems. I also talked to him about Christmas. I reminded him that he'd chosen Lily's comfort over my feelings, peace over loyalty. I told him that I wanted him in my life, but only if it was genuine, not just when he needed something. 6 months later, Ava called me from college to thank me for the college fund I'd set up for her and Ethan. She said I was the first person who'd ever really thought about her future. Then Ethan called. He asked me to teach him to cook the stuffing I used to make. So he started coming over every other Saturday, and we'd cook and talk. This past Christmas, Ryan called and asked if he could come see me on Christmas morning. He said he and Lily were working on their relationship, and he'd learned to value the relationships that mattered. He showed up with a thermos of coffee and pastries from my favorite bakery. We sat and talked, really talked. He apologized for all the years of taking me for granted. As I sit here now, looking out at the city lights from my balcony, I feel a sense of contentment I've never felt before. I've learned that love without respect isn't enough. I've chosen to surround myself with people who value me for who I am, and I'm finally free. Now, I'm curious about you who are listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar?
Comment Bilo?
And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen two other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.